If I had my twin and then somehow I had this agent I trusted, what would happen? Is my agent all of a sudden doing things for me?
We've had one running for 3 months now. Its context window hasn't exploded. It still remembers things from 3 months ago.
You can't think about AGI or beneficial AGI without thinking about people actually owning your data, having freedom, having sovereignty.
LLM reasoning is prediction. It sees the tokens you've sent in a text string, and it predicts what the next token will be, which is not reasoning. It's just prediction.
This next level of AI represents really a quantum leap.
The best analogy is it's like the difference between if you lived in a hotel or you owned a house. If you're using a big company's AI, you very much are like living in the hotel. It's convenient, it's not yours. Everyone can look at what you're doing, and when you walk out, you're done. When you are using decentralized tools, you actually are building equity in what you're using.
How does the OmegaClaw agent differ from other agents? Is there a way that it could connect with your twin? All right, welcome to episode number 2, the AGI Race. I'm here with 2 very special and incredible guests that are very knowledgeable, especially in the world of Agentic, which we can't talk about the AGI Race unless we're talking a little bit about Agentic. And so Stacey and Haley, thank you for being here. And maybe Stacey, could you start with maybe a sentence or two about yourself for the audience?
Absolutely, a sentence. Okay, well, I'm the CEO of Twin Protocol. I believe deeply in AI supporting our most human endeavors. I'm a mom. I live in Seattle. Lots of other things about me, Kai, that you know. That was like 5 sentences.
Don't forget, you're also Forbes listed 40 under 40 in the Pacific Northwest, which is a really cool accolade for you. So a lot of respect to you, Stacey, and thank you so much for being here. And a word or two about you, Haley.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's so great to be here, Kai. Thank you for inviting us. It's so great to be here with Stacey again. I'm Chief of Staff at SingularityNET. I've been at SingularityNET for a number of years now. I've been so privileged to do everything from lead marketing to products and to be in really tight with the AGI research crew, which, as was recently highlighted by Kai, we're now listed in Google searches as one of the top 5 projects headed for AGI. So it's pretty exciting spot to be.
Yeah. I Googled that before we got on. I wrote, okay, what are the top 5 AGI? And I saw SingularityNET pop up on there, and I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. That one's the decentralized one led by Dr. Gortzel. We do have a connection there. I work with SingularityNET as well, and we're powered by BGI Foundry, which is another organization that's coming down the pike there for people. So this podcast is really about creating a platform so we can talk about the AGI race, which people who are in the scientific community understand that this is probably the most important subject that we should all be talking about collectively as a species right now, because this next level of AI represents really a quantum leap that is going to essentially, we got to be really careful about this because AI is going to become more and more powerful. And so how it's built is going to be really important. And so we want to track it, and we also want to find ways to contribute to it, hopefully in the most positive way so that it's beneficial for humanity. And that's why I like working with SingularityNet and all these groups, because they do have a decentralized way to do that. So Stacey and Haley, the cool thing is with this podcast on the Agentic side, Stacey, you talked about you are in Twin Protocol. Not everyone's going to automatically know what Twin Protocol is. And I remember when I heard about that, geez, was it last year? I'm trying to place it. It might have been 2 years ago. Yeah. That's your AI twin. And it's not just the AI twin that you build on HeyGen and then add the 11 Labs voice to. It's actually, you have this back end to it, the digital vault. Could you speak a little bit about why the twin is sort of different than like a, let's say, HeyGen 11 Labs avatar that anyone could sort of make?
For sure. We can't think about AGI or beneficial AGI without thinking about people actually owning your data, having freedom, having sovereignty. So that's what Twin Protocol brings. Your Twin Vault holds your knowledge, yes, your voice or your face, or things that you're saying, Kai, but your expertise that other people can talk to and learn from. And then the vault enables other AIs to talk with other people's vaults. And it's built on chain. So you own it, control it, and you can monetize it through tokenization. So essentially tokenizing your thoughts and your data.
Okay, so that's an important point. So what you're saying is that you can own through, let's say, Twin Protocol, you could own your image, likeness, voice, those types of IP. Because I know you have an IP background, Stacey. So is this, and obviously there's a lot of ways that people could create fraudulent things online now. It's so easy to create like a deep fake of you or something like that. So you're saying
Totally.
that basically Twin is a way that you could protect your IP in terms of your name, likeness, image, and then your data, you would own your own data within there. So you're essentially building the Twin's brain in its vault. Is that
Exactly. Yep.
okay?
So you can own it. And I mean, that's very awesome and cool between humans and AIs when we're interacting with AIs as humans. And it's like next level when you think about AI is like my AI twin being able to talk with Kai and Haley, which maybe will make that happen in the near future, Kai, but also earn when my twin or my vault is picking Haley's vault's brain for ideas or things like that. So absolutely, you protect your IP, you have a place to house it. And when we're looking at our roadmap, which is very much an enterprise go-to-market, we also are partnering with data owners, enterprise companies that have your consumer data. And we want to be able to help you get that data in your vault and also monetize it. And we really believe that is the future. And that is truly what we talk about when we say decentralized AI.
Okay. So the vault is about gathering your data and putting it in your own vault where you own it. And in the age of AI and AGI, that's going to become more and more important because essentially you're making your own little twin version of you, your vault, that can then interact with other AIs, and you're sort of getting ahead of this exponential sort of growth that's coming. And then, Haley, you kind of tie into this in an interesting way because you're an expert, really a technical expert on a lot of the things that are going on in the AGI world. And you have a product that you're close to right now because agents, they're so hot right now. It's the age of Agentic, all that good stuff. And we're talking about, let's say you have a twin vault for your twin, and it's going to be able to talk back and forth based on the knowledge that it has. But now you have this agent, let's call it OmegaClaw, that I know that you've been working on that's getting ready to come out. How does the OmegaClaw agent differ from, let's say, other agents that are out there? And is there a way that it could possibly connect with your twin? Because when I think about twins, I'm like, if I had my twin and then somehow I had this agent I trusted, what would happen? Would the world explode in a good way? Or like what happens then? Like, is my agent all of a sudden doing things for me that I don't even have to prompt it? Or let's just start with the first question. What is OmegaClaw and how is that different than what's currently out there right now?
I'd love to. Thanks very much, Kai. Yeah. So, we've grown very familiar with LLMs over the past years and how they're started out, especially embedded in this prompt response type of format. And then they've grown more powerful. They're able to start connecting with email and calendar and Word documents and these things. Claws, OpenClaw, especially early this year, was developed to give more hands, right, to these LLMs and let them use tools and interact more natively. Our own MeTTa initially, now OmegaClaw, was born from this. We built it following a lot of the OpenClaw thesis of having an LLM under the harness to provide reasoning and inference and tool use planning. But we wrote it in our language MeTTa, which is the language of thought that we've made for AI specifically. And this enables it to both understand how it operates itself, its own self-reflective nature, and to be able to modify itself very natively. So what's 2,500 lines of Python for OpenClaw became 200-ish lines for OmegaClaw. Very elegant loop, still harnessed to an LLM for reasoning. But all of these, everything in the age of AI is very data heavy, right? So this, of course, is where the Twin Vault comes in, among other sources. So one of the major distinctions alongside being written in MeTTa of OmegaClaw is its memory system. It's actually got embeddings, vector embeddings of all the conversations and everything that it's had with you, rather than just a context window. And it also stores them as atoms that it can reason over and remember and timestamp and hold cleanly, not just as a string of text like context. So this makes it a very natural match for reasoning over your own data, your own Twin Vault, or any other data that you want to provide. And it also enables it to learn who you are, learn from your data, and actually improve and evolve to either become a better twin using that information, or to understand how your twin operates or would operate to work alongside you and your twin to accomplish its tasks and be even better hands operating on your systems for you.
So if I'm understanding that right, essentially OmegaClaw has better reasoning capabilities in terms of how it can make decisions or come to conclusions, and it has a way that you can see how it got to that conclusion. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. There's two very large distinctions right now between OmegaClaw and other Claw agents. And the first one is this memory system, where even now Claws, they're trying to incorporate RAG and other methods, but they don't have a true long-term eternal memory built in, which ours does, right? So from day one, you turn it on and it just keeps learning and learning and growing with you. We've had one running for 3 months now in a shared channel with a bunch of our researchers, and its context window hasn't exploded. It still remembers things from 3 months ago as much as it remembers from yesterday, and it knows what it learned and how that impacted how it grew since then. The other part, as you mentioned, is the reasoning. So LLM reasoning is, as we've heard, prediction type, right? It sees the tokens you've sent in a text string and it predicts what the next token will be, which is not reasoning, it's just prediction. It's probably this is the next thing I should respond back with. We actually have some of our symbolic Hyperon reasoning built into the OmegaClaw. So it can look at its memories, it can look at what it's learned about you over time, and it can look at contradictory information it's learned about you over time even, and reason across it with mathematical truth values, truthiness, right? To give you something that's not just predicting what's probably the next token, but actually reasoned logical outputs to what you're discussing with it. So it makes it reliable and transparent that way.
Okay, so now Stacey, we haven't so far ever had a twin from Twin Protocol, for example, or I guess there aren't probably a lot of twins out there that have this vault behind it. There hasn't been the merger yet of, let's say, taking the OmegaClaw and somehow having it interface with your twin vault.
Not yet.
What I'm asking is, what would that look like? Because this is an early show in terms of, I don't think we've ever created one yet. So it seems like something that we could do. Maybe the two of you could kind of go back and forth on what that might look like a little bit if it were to happen.
We have some experience with digesting knowledge systems for OmegaClaws to help them learn to be in a community, right? What do they need to be talking with this community? And these systems can be adapted. We're in a sprint right now, having the community work on improvements just exactly like this. And we'll be having a regular cadence of these sprints going forward. And it would be an amazing project to see the community come forward with, to see the community to build, to support them in every way that we can. But yeah, you can get the agent to look at a knowledge base like your vault, distill, understand, learn it, question you about it, and form memories that it can then reason over later to understand how you work with it and the nuance of what you're trying to build and how you're trying to build it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and also we talked about, the idea of learning and growing just is inherently human as well. So this idea of the AI twin, then the OmegaClaw having capabilities to actually ask questions to then fill gaps or even build whole categories in your vault that you don't have, that have just essentially been learned from the conversations that you have with your OmegaClaw. So we have an API SDK. There's opportunity for us to have people work on this because my background prior was in human capital and executive coaching, leadership. So this idea that your twin can help you become a better version of yourself, the missing piece is really this memory component. And every day I'm hearing all AI leaders talking about the memory component because it really is the bottleneck for the agent capabilities. So it's very exciting to test and build new tools on top, which has always been the vision with Twin Protocol and the Vault as well. Like, how can you attach it and potentially have multiple AIs that you're permissioning different types of data with?
So, Stacey, I know that at Twin Protocol, you have a very famous twin out there working right now. Natasha Graziano has a twin. She's got over 20 million followers across her social media channels. She's a motivational speaker, personal development, things like that. And my experience with Twin Protocol so far is, I speak to the twin. It'll ask me a question once I've asked it a question, but you could tell it's there's another jump there to happen still, right?
Totally.
And so is the idea that whether it's Natasha's twin or somebody else's, that when you had OmegaClaw in there with an API connection and it was working well, that it would not only ask better questions and engagement, but I suppose there's room there for it to even remember these conversations with all these different people, because Natasha's twin speaking potentially to thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people. So how would that look like?
Absolutely. Well, it's the AI enablement inside of the data, right? So there's like the AI enabled experience that you have in whatever interface. If you think of your twin vault, it could be in a chatbot, it could be in an avatar, it could be in a robot, it could be really in anything. I'm sure like what we've talked about, having hackathons, people would come up with and we've talked about it with batteries, like charging stations and other use cases that aren't necessarily human oriented, which that concept is not new, of an AI twin. So there's that piece, but then there's also the learning that could happen just in general inside with the AI enabled vault. So there's memory in multiple places.
And Haley,
Haley was going to react to that.
Yeah, Haley, what was your reaction to that? I mean, is that checking out in terms of the
Absolutely.
technical capabilities?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one of the things that's so important, and one of the reasons that Twin and SingularityNET were both in this BGI ecosystem, because we understand that building AI, building AGI that understands humans, that understands the human experience, is one that will grow into a mind with compassion, with empathy, and be able to work alongside us, right? We're both products of this same BGI mind shift that informs everything that we're building here. So having a twin vault that's informing your OmegaClaw to be a twin, or even just a twin vault that your OmegaClaw as an assistant or as a chief of staff can be consulting to understand how to work with you better, right? These are all important. Now it doesn't need to talk with you about how am I going to do this project that we're working on. It can consult with your twin vault, and it has all the information here that it needs in order to become a better colleague and work with you. And as Stacey said, the growth angle is important too, right? How do I have these systems that understand me well enough and are themselves growing more capable through this AI systems operating inside them, but are growing and becoming more capable themselves? And so being able to model the user and being able to model the self, right, this sort of meta awareness is what we're aiming for with all of these technologies. And they just fit together so well because they've been built to align this way.
Now, you touched on a couple of points there. One of them being the BGI versus AGI. I'm not sure everyone knows what that is, but this came from Dr. Ben Gortzel, who was credited with popularizing the term AGI back in the early 2000s from a book that he had written, and he's widely considered one of the leaders in AGI and one of the brilliant minds out there. And he's only been working on this stuff for 20 years, so it's a little bit ahead of the curve there. But with the MeTTa system that you've referenced, that's the coding that he developed, which has ways to self-reflect and correct, as well as a mechanism to check the math, so to speak, and make sure things add up, if I'm understanding that correctly. So it has really solid reasoning capabilities, perhaps the best that's out there right now. Am I summarizing that correctly?
Absolutely. MeTTa has been designed to be built in this self-reflective, self-recursive, self-modifying way so that it can grow, right, as we've been talking about. MeTTa also has been designed to interoperate with a number of different or any kind of AI system out there. So various AI systems have different languages that they speak, different ways of thinking. If you have an LLM performing inference, right, it's working on backprop and matrix multiplication. If you have a PLN, probabilistic logic network, it's working on probabilities. And to get these two systems to talk to each other is not simple. It's quite difficult. And MeTTa has been built so that different AI systems, which are good at different things, can interoperate on the same data and information. If you have your twin vault, then you want to be able to query it with natural language through an LLM. But you might also want to be able to reason over it and understand that data from a probabilistic logic perspective. You may want to use Bayesian inference to look at your data vault and help you see insights into there or areas of growth or impact or new ways of new creativity that you could pursue. And to be able to, you might want to, again, be fluid through temporal reasoning, which is my memory over time, or episodic memory, which is like, oh, I remember that birthday party, you know, which may be back in time, but is an entire episode I remember altogether as an event. Humans have all these types of memory and reasoning that come together to operate on our data store. So we've designed a language that answers the question, how can we have AIs that are specialized in these various ways operate on a shared data store, hand off to one another when they get stuck? You know, the LLM says, I don't know the answer to that. I need to hand off to a mathematical automated theorem prover, and it can share its state, how far it got, where it got stuck, what it's trying to solve in MeTTa. They can both speak MeTTa. So it's pretty incredible for enabling this complex cognition that way.
All right. Well, I'm going to touch on next. We're getting short on time here. I have like 20 questions that I want to ask right now, but I can't because I promised it would just be a 30-minute segment. So I know, Stacey, I'm watching your eyes kind of light up here. And I think that the idea of your twin vault and this OmegaClaw and the deep reasoning capabilities that you're describing, Haley, a lot of light bulbs are going off. And I want to reference to these hackathons that you're doing, because it sounds like an opportunity for hackathons or people that can see an entrepreneurial perspective in this to engage and get involved.
Yeah, and this is just exactly, looking to build the Linux moment of AGI. So invite builders, invite creatives in to play with OmegaClaw, to play with the Twin Vault, to play with all these technologies, PLN and MeTTa. Help us find better memory systems or better goal systems, or help us take back more of the reasoning from the LLM into systems that can be transparent and auditable and work natively over symbolic data like your data vault. We can't build it all. We're a very small team, apparently number 5 on the list of AGI builders, but the team is still quite small compared to big tech. So we need the community to come in, to be curious, to build these connectors, to build these pieces, to build these use cases, and help us flesh out how this can work based on what the world needs, not what big tech thinks humans need, but actually what people need, and build for that.
Stacey, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. I love the innovation, and hopefully there can be some OmegaClaws included in the hackathon, giving ideas. And I think this is where the magic happens. So excited to have the vaults and OmegaClaw exploration.
So to summarize that, sorry, Haley, why don't you finish right there with that?
I'm sorry. I get excited by this too. It's very much reminds me of Ray Kurzweil, right? He was looking at the progression to AGI, but one of the things he did that enabled him to become famous was thinking of the fax machine decades before it could be built, right? And then building all the technology that needed to happen to build for it. And this is something that we can see emerging now in SingularityNET, right? Twin Protocol we now have OmegaClaw, and Twin Protocol, the Twin Vaults can be pulled in, right? NewNet, they've launched their decentralized compute, and now we're ready. We have OmegaClaw and ASI chain, and we can start to deploy on NewNet. We've seen the things that an AGI needs. Probabilistic logic networks, they've been working on this for 20 years, and now finally we figured out how to hook them to an LLM and make them immediately useful for business and financial and all kinds of use cases. This is the moment where all these technologies are finally ready and coming together at the right moment.
All right. And with that, I want to just have a very, very brief, because I know we're short on time, but I want to cover a couple of quick headlines that are happening in the world of AGI and get a little your take or reaction in very small little clips. And one final thought is, if people wanted to engage in this and, let's say, create their twin, create an OmegaClaw agent that's going to interface with that, how do they do that? Where do they go? Do they go to Twin Protocol? Do they contact you, Haley? Or what's the best path to start to play with this concept?
Well, from the twin side, you can create your twin at twinprotocol.com, which automatically gives you the credentials for your Twin Vault. And then Haley, we're going to talk about the hackathon next steps, right? Or what else can people do to learn about
Yeah.
OmegaClaw?
Absolutely. So we're currently holding the hackathon through deepfunding.ai. You can go there, you can create a team, you can learn all about the hackathon process. We're actually starting on the 26th, our first one. So just in a few days, depending on when this is released. But again, this becomes a monthly cadence. And so we have recordings there of how to spin up your own OmegaClaw. We have a number of workshops that we've already held preparing folks for this first session. And the OmegaClaw itself is an open source repo. We've been getting a lot of community enthusiasm and movement and contributions on this already. So I'm very much looking forward to what the community builds over this first sprint weekend.
Okay, great. And final thoughts here. I'm going to give you a little rapid fire news here on the AGI race, since we're all interested in that. By the way, this has been curated through Anthropic and these different AI tools and things. So I'm sort of reading some of my things I've created here. The players, according to Anthropic for this, is Google DeepMind. I think most of us know that one, which, by the way, has been losing a couple of key people lately, which I'll go over very briefly. But it's described as the giant with the most computers and money. So we got Google DeepMind there. We got OpenAI, which is Sam Altman, obviously, and they are going all in on bigger models. So that's the summary on OpenAI. Lots of money. They're going all in on bigger models. Anthropic, this one is described as the safety first crowd that makes Claude. I think we like Anthropic with a big focus on safety there. MeTTa is listed coming in at number 4, and it's described as they give their AI away free and open. But I think they're still just focusing on bigger LLM models, is what I understand. And then we have SingularityNET and OpenCog coming in. Ben Gortzel, the rebel betting on decentralized AI that reasons instead of just scaling up. I think that from what I've seen in these reports when I've checked, they all say that basically the LLM model and all the funding and compute is with the bigger 4 and it's centralized, whereas the SingularityNET model is they're kind of the underdogs with less compute and less money, but it's decentralized and it's a reasoning AI that has a novel approach. Is that something you agree with, Haley?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree with that. Do I get to comment as well or just agree?
No, yeah, please. I just want to be
Haley,
I want to be careful of Stacey's time and everyone's time.
Haley.
But yeah, I mean, look, we're here to talk, so.
I would say that the big tech, I mean, they've released these LLMs and they're incredibly powerful. They've put AI on the map in a way it was not before ChatGPT launched, right? Before then, SingularityNet was struggling even to demonstrate how powerful AI could or would be in many ways to convince people. But with ChatGPT, this brought AI to the masses, to the forefront, started changing our economy and all these things. And they're absolutely incredible and so powerful. Again, our OmegaClaw is harnessed to the LLM, and it's this power that's enabled us to start hooking our systems that we've been building for so long. We needed this kind of motor, which we don't feel we need in the long run, but is helping us to get to the spot beyond that. But bigger and bigger, I mean, we're already seeing, we saw this big S curve up, and now we're seeing this leveling off. And I think, you know, what you were referencing, a number of players leaving these big companies, they're looking for more interesting research. They can see this leveling off, and they want to be working on something that's more than just bigger, something more meaty, something more, they can see that there's some gaps here. And we've heard over and over from AGI-ish, AI-ish researchers who come into the ecosystem. They're like, oh, you know, we should put this and this and this together. And then they start diving into some of Dr. Ben's books. And they're like, oh, yes, we do need temporal reasoning. Oh, look, and you've built the math for it. And oh, yes, we do need, episodic memory. And oh, there's a book on that too, right? And so there's these decades of thinking, development, and deep looking at what it takes for a machine to be generally intelligent. We saw self-drivings kind of come out with a bang and then hit their long tail problem, and they're still on that long tail problem. We saw LLMs come out with a bang and hit their long tail problem, that little individual one-off problems that the AI wasn't trained on, and you just have to keep whack-a-mole addressing one by one because you can't anticipate them. When you go to an AGI system, the G is that you don't have this whack-a-mole, that it can reason about uncertain conditions and uncertain tasks that it's never been trained on or faced before, and it doesn't need to get it wrong and be reprogrammed or get 10,000 hours of correct training to improve. But to get to that G, there's a whole lot of elements that have to go into it. And there are only a handful of people or labs in the world who've been looking deeply at that G instead of pursuing what is working right now but has long tails.
See, Stacey, this is why we get to enjoy when we get to have Haley in the room.
For sure. Well, I agree with it. And I think it's like the tale as old as time, right? From like my human capital days, like people always love talking about the scarcest resource being compute, which, okay, yes. And it's people who doing frontier work and being able and still wanting to. So you lose those as big tech and you're going to have a big problem, which is already on the frontier. And then I also wanted to comment on Ben being called a rebel because, first of all, I love that. And the rebels are obviously not the ones building the bigger models. You know, they're the ones that are going to, like every rebel, give the power back to the people. So that's what it's about. We can follow that model that we've had forever. Like, okay, we'll rent what you've owned and you're going to get the biggest margin off of that. Meaning, okay, I'll use this social media tool because it gets me an audience and you have the distribution, but I am getting literally a fraction of the value that you're getting as the company and entity. So I love that it was called a rebel because that does first and foremost, like the original rebels of human society, look at disrupting a model or a system or a structure that doesn't work really for the majority of people anymore.
Yeah. And the key distinction was that the Singularity Ben stuff is decentralized, meaning that it's available for everyone, whereas the other ones are centralized. And then the decentralized one, you own your data, if I understand it correctly, whereas the centralized ones, maybe you don't. Am I right or wrong on that one, Haley?
In the centralized system, the technology is proprietary. Okay, so you start using a Claude and it's going great, or a Chat GPT system and it's going great, your project's going wonderfully, and then they update. What changed? I don't know. I have no idea. And it works worse. And I don't know why, like it's sort of mysterious. Where when you have decentralized, you can go into the model and you can see this is for MeTTa. They've got decentralized, they've got open source models. You can see how it was trained and how it will predict from the inside. With a centralized, with a closed box system, you just get out what you get out, and whatever they've done to the guardrails that they put on, or you have no say or control or transparency into, and all these things. Decentralized means that everybody can run it for themselves. They can own it from themselves. The recent Mythos US government kerfuffle is an illustration. The government told the centralized lab to turn it off. It's too dangerous. And so whether it is or not, now only the people that are approved to use it can use it, which creates this upper crust of AI users, or the people that can afford to use it, right, can get the best compute and can continue to on their trajectory of becoming the 1% and the 0.5% and the 0.1% like Elon Musk, the one and only. Where if it's decentralized, nobody can turn off access. You can't have a country that says you can't use this model. You don't have any limits put on you by a company. You get to use it, you get to see it, and you get to improve and contribute to it, make it yours.
And Kai, you don't have to be technical. For some of the listeners here, you don't have to want to even know how things are trained or anything like that. I think the best analogy is it's like the difference between if you lived in a hotel or you owned a house. If you're using a big company's AI, you very much are like living in the hotel. It's convenient. It's not yours. Everyone can look at what you're doing for the most part. They own everything. And when you walk out, you're done. When you are using decentralized tools, that doesn't mean you have to build it yourself. You actually are building equity in what you're using. And that is really important. And I think what Haley was talking about with just the knowledge of what's going on with what you're using, like I highly encourage that. And I just always want people to know it can be as simple as just researching some basic things about and that's what SingularityNET represents. Because most people, I think, live in the hotel and they don't really even realize there's another option.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Interesting.
the power of just educating, and for everyone listening, that's you who I'm speaking with.
All right. Well, we are over time. I recognize that. I am going to push for 30 more seconds because I wanted to get to this. I think we can do it. Little piece of news in this AGI race is that John Jumper, the scientist who won a Nobel Prize for solving how proteins fold, quit Google and went to Anthropic. And apparently he was paid quite a bit of money when he was at Google, and he left to Anthropic because Google made him work on boring coding tools instead of his science. I've diluted it down in my AI to speak in a way that, I can understand. But basically, he had created all this amazing science with how proteins fold, apparently, in human biology. And Google tried to get him to work on commercial coding. And then he's like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to go work at Anthropic. So now I guess Anthropic has just geared up their science systems with that talent going there. And then the last note was that 2 days before, apparently, they lost another one who actually might have been even higher profile. And this Noam Shazir, according to what I'm reading here, he's the guy whose work basically powers every modern AI. He left Google for OpenAI. So OpenAI just got one of the big geniuses out there and loaded him on their team. And Google even paid billions to get this guy 2 years ago. And he just left. So basically, 2 key stars at Google have left, one going to OpenAI and one to Anthropic. Final thoughts on that little piece of news there. Start with you, Haley, just real quick.
Yeah, those pieces are very interesting for sure. I will perhaps let Stacey comment on that. But the other piece that goes directly with that as well is you're seeing a flood of people from OpenAI, from Anthropic, from Google, from these big companies going out and raising themselves, right? Because they have these expertise in building these big systems, but they see that there's something missing here that they want to fill. There's a gap, there's a need, that these companies are incrementally improving products, LLMs, and the services around them. They want to be on that next S curve, right? If this one's tapering, they want to be on the next one. They follow in rows. This is how we've gotten chips advancing. You just see one technology after the other helping chips advance. And all of these great scientists are not only moving from boring tasks to more focused, but also to entrepreneurial roles because they want to be building the next S curve. And we think it's here with Hyperon.
Okay, so you like Hyperon, and you're saying the scientists are following what they want to do rather than just what they're being paid. Stacey, one comment on that?
Completely agree. I mean, it's a human talent conversation, which is they're going to go where they can do frontier work and what's aligned with them individually. So it's not just about the money. And also, these companies, their priorities aren't just set by what's frontier work. They have shareholders and investors and tons of stakeholders determining what they think is the best bet, which isn't necessarily aligned with what's the future. It could also just be protecting the past, if you may.
And one little note on that was I also did see that both OpenAI and Anthropic had pending IPOs coming out. That may have also played into it a little bit too. But the bottom line is that in the AGI race, Google lost 2 key people this week. One going to Anthropic representing the science, and then one going to OpenAI representing sort of fundamental tech, I guess, building the actual AI, which I don't think I'm saying that exactly right. Haley, what does he represent when he's at OpenAI?
He co-wrote one of the papers, I believe, Attention is All You Need, which is one of the, LLMs have been maturing as a technology for years, but one of the biggest breakthroughs was when they added in attention so that the AI could understand. So when you have a typo in your LLM, in your ChatGPT or Claude window, it doesn't send you off into some weird prediction zone. It knows that what you probably meant based on the rest of the sentence is, X, right? It can tell between whether you meant Michael Jackson when you typed Michael Jordan. It's like, well, you're talking about music.
Right. So OpenAI got a little better with in terms of
Deep
predicting
thinker.
and
Yeah.
deep thinking. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I know we went over time. I really appreciate this. I think it was definitely informative for people who are interested in AGI and Agentic. Appreciate y'all so much. And could we revisit this in maybe a month or so when we hopefully have and OmegaClaw and Twin connected, and maybe we can even bring it on the show or do something interesting or bring some twins on, but we'll take to the next step. All right. So thank you
Great.
so much for being here.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kai.
both.
All right. See you next time.